What is going on, guys? Hopefully you're having a good day. I just wanted to share with you a little bit of knowledge, at least my knowledge of active target and catching these fish on a spinning rod with a shaky head. In specific, the Giggy Head by Gambler with a Sweebo worm on the back. So we're going to cast some of these fish. Hopefully we can catch some. Hopefully we can share some info with you guys. And most importantly, hopefully you guys learn something. So stay tuned. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, like this video. And yeah. What is going on, guys? Hey, so I'm going to give you a quick breakdown of the gear that I'm using and what we're doing here. So we're throwing to these offshore fish. We're fishing out here, as you can see on the active target. You can get a good idea of the depth here. It is just about 20 feet. You can see the 20-foot mark there. Trolling motor spot locked, so it's moving around and stuff. But 20 feet. Look, there's a fish out there. Yeah, there he is. Kind of see him. But anyway, what we're doing is we're sitting on some offshore structure, or offshore shell beds, I should say. And I am targeting these fish on the active target. Look, there's another one down there on the bottom. That's what they kind of look like. Look, that one's under the boat. Look, he just kind of disappeared. But there's another one. That honestly doesn't look like a bass. That almost looks like a drum. You can kind of see the shape of his body as it scans and the way he's swimming. That's definitely a drum right there. But essentially, we're scanning with the active target. We're looking for individual fish or little groups of fish, and we're casting to them with this shaky head. You know, it doesn't seem very traditional to cast to these fish, but it seems to really trigger them for some reason. It gets down on the bottom and they just kind of get up behind it, and you just shake it real slow. Honestly, you're not really even shaking it. You're just kind of more or less moving slack line, almost like you would with a drop shot. And I've got this rigged up on the Giggy Head. This is a 3/16 ounce Giggy Head. This is a redbug color Sweebo worm by Gambler. What I like about this worm and this setup, it's just really light. It's really finessey. It gets down there and it's not real intrusive. A lot of guys throw like a 1/2 ounce or a 3/4 ounce shaky head with a big worm. This thing is just a lot more toned down than that, and I think it gets more bites. It may not get as big a bites, but it really does get bit. One of the things I will quickly note, this does have a smaller hook on it, but it works great with this worm. I have played around with rigging it a lot. I used to rig it up like this, where you just kind of stab the worm or the hook into the worm, and I was missing a lot of bites like that. So what I like to do is I actually like to measure it up to the worm. I will stab it through the worm completely, so the hook is all the way through the worm, as you can see, and then I take and I actually skin hook it or texpose it, whatever you want to call it, through the worm again. So that's basically the setup. I'm running 8-pound fluorocarbon leader, pretty long leader. I'm running like a 15-foot, 20-foot leader. You know, the water is deep and I don't want them to see my yellow braided line. I like the yellow. It gives me a good idea of when my bait hits the bottom, whether it's windy or you know, cloudy or whatever the conditions might be. I can see that line really good. This is my go-to rod for this shaky head, because you got to penetrate through some plastic and set that hook. This is the 7'1" heavy action. This is the Feather series. I think it's the perfect length. You get a decent cast, but it's still like, you know, long enough to pick up some slack for the hook set. Not too short. I don't really like much shorter than that 7'1". This is like my go-to kind of 7'1", 7'2". Sometimes I'll bump up to like a 7'6", but that's usually for, you know, like a spy bait, or if I'm long casting a Ned rig or something like that. But this rod works perfectly for this shaky head. Like I said, yellow braided line. This is 10-pound braided line on here, just a 2500 series spinning reel. This is the setup, but let's see if we can catch some fish. I'm going to try to show you guys what I'm looking for on here and what I'm doing and kind of how I'm judging my casting distance. So that's a big deal. I'll quickly kind of explain that to you guys. So up here at the top of the screen, I've got it set right now to 100 feet on my active target. So underneath the menu button there, you can kind of see it says 100 feet. And then there's your 80 foot, there's your 60 foot, there's your 40 foot, 20 foot, that's under the boat. So essentially you want to know these numbers. You want to understand what your what your setting is at. You want to understand how far away. So basically the way I judge 20 feet is I think about if I have my boat length in front of me, how far away 20 feet is. So I judge it based on, okay, this boat's 20 feet long. How far away is the end of my motor from my cast? So 20 feet's like right about out, you know, you get the idea. Essentially you're measuring. I use my boat to kind of measure whatever works for you. You can actually set this up to where there's a grid. It gives you a much more detailed idea of like how far away stuff is and how deep it is. But once you get used to it, you don't really need the grid. You kind of just look at these numbers and get an idea. It's really hard right now on Guntersville for me to get fish to bite that are any closer than 20 feet. I can get the fish to bite that are out here in about 30, 40. If they're out like 40 to 60, usually, I mean, you're not going to get all of them to bite by any means. But look at that, there's fish down there right now. I really want to cast to them, but I'm going to keep explaining to you guys really quick. If they're out in that 40, like 30 to 60 foot range, that's usually like the deal. And essentially I'm just picking some fish out on here. So look, we've got fish out there right now. Pretty much this is going to tell you, look, they're kind of off to the right side of the boat. This guy's going to indicate that. As you can see, the trolling motor's moving because they're spot locked, but we knew those fish, so let's let it kind of spin us here. I'll just kick it around for you guys and show you. So all right, let's keep, okay, so right there, we'll cast to these fish right here. Look, there's like 3 or 4 of them sitting right there. They're right in front of the boat basically, and we'll cast to the furthest fish. So we're gonna cast 40 feet out. So let's spot lock again so we don't lose our place, but we know they're 40 feet in front of the boat. There's a bunch of eelgrass right here, so it's gonna be kind of a tricky deal. That's not quite 40 feet. We wanna get a little further. It's hard because all that eelgrass, we don't wanna end up in all that. So that's a little bit closer than 40. That's probably 35 feet right there. That'll work. That's still gonna fall in the vicinity of a bunch of fish. So, okay, we're gonna let it hit the bottom. Like I said, that yellow braid is really gonna allow that to be easy to tell. So we're on the bottom now. And like I said, really subtle. You're just gonna barely move it. Starting to get some rain here, but that's the idea. If I get one on this cast, great, but if not, oh, there he is. There he is. That's exactly what you're trying to do. Basically, you're trying to cast to those marks and just barely move that worm. Starting to get some rain, but oh, that's a decent fish. But that's how it works. That's how easy it is. I mean, that was quick. But that's the idea, guys. That is the idea right there. See if we can get some more for you guys. I don't know, this rain's gonna hit us pretty hard, but get this fish in and I'll show it to you guys here. Come here, buddy. There you go. Oh my God, it's raining hard. It's in my pocket, I'll put it away. That's a nice chunky bass though, guys, on the Sweebo worm, on the Giggy Head. Look at this, it's starting to pour down rain on us. Hopefully you can hear me. If not, I'll overlay some of me talking. Hopefully you could hear me talk about how I set up for that fish and kind of how I positioned the boat and what I did in order to catch that bass. Nice healthy fish. So the key, guys, is very, very little movement. And I'm not trying to move the worm on the bottom very much at all because we're targeting these fish directly where they're sitting. We're casting to them on the active target, targeting them exactly where they're at. They're not really having to move far for the bait. We know we're landing right near or right on a fish. And so the idea is you're just trying to entice that bass into biting the worm. And so you're really not trying to move the bait much. You're just trying to impart a very minimal amount of action, just enough to kind of get that fish's interest. And ideally, I mean, not every single one of them is going to bite. That's just a given. But ideally, you're trying to just barely wiggle it in front of his face, just enough to entice him to bite it. Like I said, not all of them are going to bite by any means, but that's typically the best way to get them to trigger to bite, is just barely moving it. A lot of the times just letting it sit there is a good way to catch them too. I don't know why they like it just sitting there, but maybe it's just that it's in front of their face long enough that they just can't help themselves. But I won't give it too long. I'll drop in front of a fish for, I don't know, maybe, 30, 40 seconds. And if I don't get that fish to bite, I'm going to target another fish on the screen. Ideally, you've got a bunch of fish to kind of target and cast to, and you're just gonna keep picking apart the area, kind of casting to as many fish as you can, and eventually you're gonna trigger one to bite, and if you're lucky, you're gonna trigger a bunch of them to bite. Okay, we've got like 4 or 5 fish right here at 30 feet, so we're gonna try to drop on them. That's a perfect cast. I mean, that's like about 30 feet, almost exactly. We know those fish are right here in this vicinity, so I'm gonna slack line that to the bottom. Whether they bite or not, we don't know, but we're gonna present the bait as you know, natural and as slowly as possible to try to entice one of these fish to bite, knowing that, hey, it's right there. So we're just gonna kind of drag it very, very, very slowly. Like I said, if you have the patience to just let, you know, dead stick it, so to speak, it's probably your best bet with these fish, especially in the summertime. We're fishing on, you know, summertime, end of summer, I'd say. Late summer is when we're out here. Water temperature is 85.7 degrees on my Lowrance unit here. So water is very, very warm. These fish are, just like when the water gets cold, they get a little bit lethargic when it gets that hot. And so you don't necessarily need to move your bait a lot, especially a worm. It's interesting, they will trigger to something moving extremely fast. I have been catching them today on these big crankbaits, but that's like the other end of the spectrum. That's like a reactionary bite. But when they're feeding, you know, like on this worm, you're better off fishing it just dead slow. For some reason, they like that just very do nothing kind of presentation when you're fishing a worm. What's up, guys? Hopefully you enjoyed the little video. I know it's probably pretty short, but hey, I just wanted to make it informational. I wanted you guys to learn something. Hopefully, if you've got this forward-facing sonar technology, I really hope that this helped kind of open your eyes maybe to something that you can do on your body of water that you're fishing. Or if you come out here to Guntersville, whether it be this time of the year or any time of the year when these fish are out deep, you can use this information to your advantage. And if you don't already, you gotta add that little dude to your arsenal. Not expensive. Grab a pack of Giggy Heads, grab a pack of Sweebo worms, throw it in the box or throw it in whatever, you know, your bag, and give it a shot. It doesn't just work out deep, works really good up shallow around rocks or laydowns, really anywhere. So anyway, guys, I appreciate the support as always, and if you're not already, subscribe to the channel. Gonna try to pump out some more content, you know, try to do at least a couple videos a month for you guys, and I appreciate your support as always. Catch you guys next time on another episode of Jacob Wall Fishing.